The atmosphere inside the MotoGP paddock at Mugello is already intensifying before the weekend has fully begun. The spotlight is naturally fixed on Márquez and the way he is managing his physical comeback with Ducati at one of the most demanding circuits on the calendar. But from what I can see around the factory garage, the bigger story this weekend is not only Márquez's condition, it is how Ducati is starting to deal with increasingly complex internal dynamics between its two leading riders. Mugello has always been a brutal track from a physical standpoint. The elevation changes, long braking zones and high-speed direction changes place enormous stress on a rider's upper body, particularly the shoulders and arms. Because of that, Ducati's approach around Márquez appears far more conservative than usual. Inside the garage, the priority is clearly not outright lap time at this stage. The focus is on ensuring he can complete meaningful race runs without a visible drop in performance late in the stint. What stands out in the data is that the current Ducati configuration still suits Márquez extremely well when he is physically comfortable. The Desmosedici remains exceptionally stable under heavy braking and very strong on corner entry, traditionally the strongest phase of Márquez's riding style. The difference now is that he is no longer attacking the front tyre with the same violence seen during his Honda years. I see a much smoother release of brake pressure towards the apex, which is critical at Mugello, where fast corners punish any instability at high lean angle. The more complicated area appears to be corner exit once rear grip begins to fade. In recent races, Ducati has shown slightly more sensitivity to tyre drop over longer runs compared to the early phase of the season. Normally, Márquez compensates for that with aggressive body positioning and the ability to rotate the bike sharply on exit. After the injury, though, there are still moments where he looks slightly restrained when committing fully to the throttle. Looking at the race simulations, the impression inside the paddock is that Ducati is prioritizing rear stability and tyre life over a single qualifying style lap. Meanwhile, Francesco Bagnaia arrives at Mugello carrying a different kind of pressure. This circuit naturally fits him. Bagnaia remains one of the cleanest riders on the grid in terms of braking technique and mid-corner flow. Compared to Márquez, his riding style is calmer and more precise, with fewer corrections once the bike is leaned over. When the setup window is right, I still consider Bagnaia one of the strongest riders in MotoGP at managing rear tyre degradation over full race distance. But the internal situation at Ducati is no longer as straightforward as it was in previous seasons. Márquez's arrival has shifted the centre of attention inside the garage. Even while recovering physically, engineers continue to study his feedback very closely because development direction naturally follows the rider capable of extracting the absolute limit from the bike. That creates subtle but very real tension. From what I see in the paddock, Bagnaia remains composed publicly, but internally the competitive pressure is beginning to build. Technically, the setup direction between the two sides of the garage is also becoming increasingly interesting. Márquez's crew appears to prefer a more planted front end with slightly reduced agility during rapid direction changes. Bagnaia, on the other hand, still favours a freer motorcycle through mid-corner to preserve speed in Mugello's fast sectors. Differences like these usually emerge when two elite riders begin demanding separate technical identities from the same machine. Outside Ducati, Pedro Acosta remains the most fascinating threat to monitor. KTM may still lack Ducati's consistency over full race distance, but their corner entry aggression and initial acceleration out of slower turns continue to improve. Acosta himself is exceptionally brave under late braking. However, I still see KTM struggling slightly more with rear tyre temperature management once track grip rises significantly, particularly at circuits like Mugello. Over sprint distance, they can look extremely competitive, but tyre control during longer races remains less stable. Comparing the motorcycles overall, Ducati still possesses the most complete package on the grid. Their balance between braking stability, traction, aerodynamic efficiency, and race pace consistency remains unmatched. KTM is getting closer mechanically, while Aprilia continues to impress through mid-corner speed, but Ducati still operates as the reference point in nearly every performance area. Heading into the weekend, the strongest impression from inside the paddock is that Ducati is entering a decisive phase of its season. Márquez may not dominate immediately after returning, but his presence alone is already reshaping the competitive structure inside the team. Bagnaia remains extremely strong at Mugello and understands this circuit better than almost anyone with the Ducati package. But if Márquez's physical condition continues improving over the next rounds, this internal battle could become one of the defining elements of the championship fight. Right now, I read the situation as a rivalry that has not yet fully exploded, but the pressure inside the Ducati garage is undeniably rising. And in MotoGP, moments like these often determine the direction of an entire championship long before the standings fully reveal it. The other aspect that cannot be ignored is how Ducati is carefully controlling expectations around Márquez internally. From conversations and reactions inside the paddock, there is no sense of panic regarding outright results this weekend. The emphasis is more strategic than emotional. Ducati understands that if Márquez regains full physical confidence over the next few races, his ceiling remains extraordinarily high. That is why the atmosphere around his side of the garage feels measured rather than desperate. They are building performance progressively instead of forcing an immediate statement result at Mugello. What I also find interesting is the way Márquez has adapted his energy management during longer stints. In previous seasons, especially during his Honda era, he often rode on instinct and aggression, constantly saving unstable situations on corner entry. With the Ducati, the approach is visibly more calculated. He now relies far more on maintaining momentum and reducing unnecessary steering corrections mid-corner. That shift may sound subtle, but technically, it changes tyre consumption patterns significantly over race distance. Bagnaia, meanwhile, still appears to have the more natural understanding of how to maximize the Ducati over an entire weekend. His strength is not just pure speed, it is his ability to arrive at Sunday with a complete setup package already optimized for tire life, braking balance, and rear traction. At Mugello, where maintaining rhythm through the fast sectors is essential, that experience matters enormously. I still see Bagnaia as the rider with the cleaner baseline package entering the weekend. However, the pressure surrounding him is becoming increasingly psychological rather than technical. When a rider like Márquez joins the same structure, every small fluctuation in performance immediately gains extra weight inside the garage. Even if nobody says it publicly, the comparison becomes unavoidable. Every telemetry overlay, every race run, every braking trace is studied in parallel. In situations like this, riders often start riding slightly outside their natural instinct, and that is usually where mistakes begin appearing.